my drive is spinning up for a moment here, external drive. Please don't crash.
Don't worry, good vibes.
I have external storage, and sometimes it takes a moment
Yeah,
to spin up.
it'll revive.
Okay, here we are.
Save it, save it.
Yeah. All right, so once this is saved, you can see it hardens the base name. And what that means is it just turns it into an actual file string. Now, you can go and you can turn that off over here. Say don't harden the base name on save. This is not useful to me because if I go back and let's say I versioned this file up to version 3, and I run this cache again, it's still going to run this cache and save it as v2 because that's hardened. Now you can say don't harden the base name, and you can set something more explicit for your output tokens. That's still a lot to keep track of if you have multiple file caches scattered throughout your HIP file, to me. And that's why I like to do what I'm calling here the deconstructed method. And what we're doing is we're just going to use a ROP geometry output. And this, the only thing we're setting in the ROP geometry output is the file tokens. In fact, I'm not even setting start and end frames, even though this is saving a single frame. Down here, the glass dissolve file cache doesn't need to have this set. And the reason is that can all be done here in our PDG network. So let's do that. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to this mini effect that we built and set up the caching for it as if, you know, in a simpler environment. So start by just grabbing that control that we built, put that in here. And then what we'll do is ROP geometry output. And it's important to name these. They have to be pretty specific. So we'll say sphere dissolve. And since I already have the file tokens over here, I'm just going to grab them. Again, file tokens, again, it's a lot up to how you want to go about it in terms of how the directory structure that you want to use. But this works pretty well for me. So what this is saying is it's taking my cache variable, like we talked about earlier, which is this path right here. And I like to set this to a project name, not a HIP name again, because we want to version our HIP files. So project name and then a global version. And this doesn't necessarily have to correspond to the version of the HIP file. Next, putting it in a directory that's named after the ROP geometry output. And then in these backticks here, we have an individual cache version. So if I middle click on this and expand it out, you can see this is the path it's using. The frame number and a version of v1. But I'm not going to actually run this ROP right here. Let's go ahead and drop down a top network. At this stage, it might be easier to go to a different view. And let me know if this becomes hard to see. So I want to have that ROP network open next to it. Okay, I got that. And okay, top net. All right, so let's, this is something I do as I'm building the effects. The top network tends to grow depending on the different simulations that we're using. So local scheduler, it's a good idea to set this to CPU counts less one. You're basically using maximum slots without locking up your system, is what that means. Working directory is not super important, except that every time you run your PDG, you cook your PDG nodes, it's going to want to save your current file. So I don't save files in HIP. I save them in job HIP. And that'll make sure that it's overriding the correct files. That's it for the local scheduler. And the node that we need, PDG, that we need is ROP fetch. And then we'll name this the same as our geometry output. Here, resolve. And then you can just drag that ROP geometry output into there. And this is important. We don't want to set, again, F start and F end here. Delete that. And we have our frame range already set here in this. So we can just copy, paste relative reference. You can also use a vector. You can use when you create the parameter here for the step. I don't find that useful. This is fine for my purposes. So let's generate that node. So when you generate the node, it'll look at the parameters and generate the work items. In this case, the work items are each cache frame. So next, drop down a file node. And this file node is going to be whatever the output of this is. Whatever the ROP geometry saves out. And that's pretty simple here. We can just copy parameter, paste relative reference. And of course, it's going to error out because there's nothing saved there right now. But we can go ahead and, before we cook that node, let's put another cache file up here. That's a single file. Sorry. ROP geometry output. So in this case, the geometry is very simple and the growth solve ran very fast. But for complex geometry, this is be nice to have this as a cache. Let's say this is growth here. In this case, it's just a single frame. So if we copy and paste our file tokens here, just get rid of this $F. It's going to be a single frame. We'll need a ROP fetch for that in PDG. Can drag that over here. And this is going to be a single frame, so we can leave it as is. So we'll drop down another file. And that's going to be the output from this. Copy parameter, paste relative reference. Now, one thing that's apparent now is that this does need to run first. This is a dependency. This cache can't do anything until this cache is run. And this is important to keep in mind when you're putting together your cache management in PDG is you'll need to drop down and wait for all. And there's other ways to set your priorities to say which PDG node runs first. I find this to be the most foolproof way of doing it. And it's also visual. Like I can see what the dependencies are right away. So yeah, that's just going to make sure that this one runs first and then this one. And if we go ahead and generate, cache management was a lot more manual before PDG. You could create HDAs to alleviate the process a lot. PDG kind of brings everything to another level. I'm going to go ahead and run this and take questions while it's caching. So if you cook the bottommost node in your network, it will calculate the ones previous. So cook node. And then the magic of PDG, just grab a coffee. All right. Any questions so far?
Any questions? I think we're good so far, but I have a feeling some are gonna start coming in here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. Ah, here we go. Igor, do you find yourself using PDG for most projects since TOPS was released?
Definitely for file caching. And it's just a very intuitive way of managing caches. The fact that you can go here to one of the great things about it is not having to do a whole lot of file management. You can go to delete this. Well, nothing's found right now, but you can open a window that shows you there we go, all the generated files, and you can delete them from inside of PDG. I think I killed this process when I did that. But that's super handy because this is a very simple, two ROP network. But when you have a ton of them, you can go through and just delete the ones you don't need. And if you run them, you cook the bottommost node, it will only look at those. It's intelligent enough to skip over the cache files that are already generated.
Mhm.
And that was something that was a little harder to do in other times. So cook this node. Does that answer your question, Igor?
Another question. Yep, it does. Do you have a recommendation on a good tutorial for PDG? I assume, Christopher, or reference or PDF.
Maybe we can get back to you on that on
Yeah,
Discord. There are some really good ones. In fact, I think Side Effects has a master
Side
class.
Effects has a great class, and it's by
Yeah.
one of our teachers, Daniel. Daniel Lee has an amazing PDG course when he was at Side Effects.
Okay.
So highly recommend that. And Douglas, can you go over the time shift node just prior to the ROP node?
Sure. Prior to the ROP node. Oh, right here. Yeah. So the time shift is taking the last frame. Basically, we're running the simulation. We're running the growth simulation, and we're taking the last frame of that sim. At that stage, this time shift has a time step on every point. If that's what you're asking. So that's why we only need. In this case, it's the last frame of our timeline, but this could be anywhere. It's the last frame of the growth solve.
Could you show the attribute in the geometry spreadsheet right here? Like,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
sure. So actually there's a couple other attributes you can see there, but the main one is this my age.
Yep.
So it looks like we're starting from a value of, it looks like we're starting from 5, and then it goes to 150, which on our timeline would be 1150. And that at this stage, that's an unchanging value. We've time shifted it. So that gives us, you can think of it as you could think of it as a ramp that goes through all of our points, but it was timestamped by the growth infection. So it takes on all those attributes. It's frozen in time, right?
It's frozen in time, but what's so cool is like it's almost like you're baking time in there with
Totally.
this my age attribute, and
Yeah,
therefore you can resurrect it.
exactly. Yeah, it's baked in, and at that point, we're just running this ramp through it. We're just saying, okay, take this ramp, and this ramp could be anything. It's just taking that as input. And the more you work with this effect, the more sense it will make too. and the flexibility. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do with it. So our cache, I'm gonna cancel the cache here. Don't need all that. But yeah, you can see as soon as I hit this this file loader here, as soon as it became available, there it is. Let's go ahead and change this to lit spheres. And then down here, this will load automatically because it's just tied to the output from this ROP. So we have our cached files. And then as part of this process of deconstructed file caching, here's something that I like to do that tends to save me a lot of time. And what it is, it's analogous to in the file cache node, turning on and off this load from disk. We can do this in a kind of a more deconstructed way. So add a switch and map that into here. The file will come into actually the live input from will be in the first input of the switch, the input 0, and input 1 will be the cached file. And what that gives us is just a way to switch easily between cached files and non-cached. And then what I like to do is take my control panel here. Let's go edit parameter interface. Let's add a folder. And a folder is just another way of saying a tab. And this tab we'll call cache. So now we have a tab here called caches. And we will add a toggle, basically a checkbox, and call that, say, what are we calling this? Use growth sphere. We call that use growth sphere cache. So we have a checkbox, and then you can just say copy parameter, go down here to the switch, paste relative reference, and then we can toggle that on and off easily. When this is on, it's just going to switch to this input. Does that make sense? We can do the same thing down here. Switch. And this comes in handy later on when you're doing a lot of pre-caching. In some cases, you want to cache things like flip that take a long time to render or to simulate, but you want to have a way to easily switch between simulating that again and using the cache file. So go back here and just add another one. Another toggle. And this will be sphere dissolve. So use copy, paste it into the switch. And there you have it. It's a simple way of doing that, managing. And I think the more cache files you have, the simpler and more direct the approach, the better. And then everything is being done inside your PDG network in terms of managing those caches. So that all makes sense. Any questions at this stage?
Mostly compliments, which are great. And how much more of your demo do you have? Just out of curiosity.
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
great time. Just under 2 hours. Perfect. I also just wanted to encourage everyone to practice what you learned. We'll have the video up Monday or Tuesday, latest. And we'll have our Discord channel. Hopefully everyone is on our Discord. I will send you guys an email in case someone's not on the Discord, but you should all be in the channel for this class. Would love to see you guys post your work. So we're gonna have exercise 1, 2, and 3 for each of these sessions. And please, please, please post. We'd love to see it. And think about what you learned today and how you can put your own spin on it. I think when I first saw the rehearsal, it would be neat to see you guys work with, like, we have one radius, but what if we made several areas of infection? What would that look like? Or think about how you can change this in some way. Oh, thank you, David.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this mini setup here, I wanted to say that this is a good opportunity to just play around with different geometry as input. You basically have the building blocks to the effect right here in this area. So yeah, try mapping other geometry into the growth solver, try out different settings for that growth solve. And the more you work with it, the more sense it'll make.
Yeah. And just play. I think that's the word I'd like to send you guys off with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I wanted to say real quickly is that technique works with any kind of growth solve or non-growth solve, really. Anything that you can get a time step output from. In this, I have an example of it, and you can see it in this pyro source spread, where I am doing the same thing. I'm just time shifting the pyro source to its final frame. It's baking right now. And then I'm using, in this case, the output that I'm using is not my age, it's total burn. But since total burn gives us a timestamp, sorry, at every for every point, at this point we can totally do this with ramps too. So it's very handy, and it's a very good concept because there's so many times when you're running sims and it's just not necessary. You want to, in situations where you can run it once, it's much better. Sometimes the best sims are the ones you don't have to run.
Yeah, that'll be the tagline for this session.
Yeah.
And we do have some students that can't wait to get their hands on this file. Would you mind saving this, and I can just put it in the chat right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
What is the version that the master file you're using right now?
I don't have the file open.
I believe it's version 2. So I'm going to change.
Okay.
I'm going to save this as version 3. Student files. Yeah. Madness. V2. Yeah. V3. All right. I'm going to say this is V3 master, and I will make it available.
And then you can just drop it right in the chat. There's a little icon that says file.
Should I stop sharing my screen? I'm actually, let me see. Or
you can stop sharing.
Yeah, let's see. Because that'll, okay.
And we can all stop the recordings.
All right. Yeah, I will, right here in the chat screen. It's fine.